This meeting is being recorded.
So as you put your name and community of faith in the chat, that's great. Is there anybody still having issues with Zoom?
Well,
Yeah,
I put
my name is
in.
my name is not
Private.
coming on. I've just got owner's iPad.
Okay,
I put my name in, but I didn't, I was trying to go down to put my church in and then it just jumped me out of it.
okay. So let's start with owner's iPad. What is your name? I can put it in for you.
Gary Meisner.
Hugh Meisner?
Yeah, Gary Meisner.
Oh, it's Gary.
M-I-Z. Yeah. M-I-Z-E-N-E-R.
M-I-Z
E-N.
E-N.
E-R.
Okay. Is that right?
That's it. You got it.
And then Hugh, you were having trouble with your
Well,
church?
yeah. Well, what I did was I tried to go down and do my church. So I'm at Delta United Church
Okay,
for Utah.
okay.
And Lynn, as Bob Stevenson, I still haven't got my name up on with my picture there.
Okay, let me see if I can find
I
it.
typed in the bottom there, but
Oh, I can see Bob Stevenson, it says on your picture.
yeah, but I'm not from Waterford United Church there. Or
Oh,
nobody
no.
else is either.
No, that's in the chat piece, so that's different.
Oh,
than what it
okay,
shows
okay.
there.
Okay, sorry.
If
No worries.
we put it in the chat piece, but has it been sent?
It will automatically, as soon as you hit enter, it posts it to chat.
Oh, okay, enter.
Enter. Where's enter?
Just hit the enter on your keyboard.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to ask people to mute as we go through this, but if you have questions, rather than worrying about the raise your hand feature, just unmute and say, I have a question. We'll also have time for questions at the end, but there might be something that occurs to you as we're going through, and I don't want somebody to forget their question. And I am going to start screen sharing in a minute, and we'll follow the PowerPoint along together.
So we should mute.
Yes, and we're going to begin with our territorial acknowledgement. So as we gather this evening, let us pause to recognize that we live and work and worship on the traditional lands and territories of many Indigenous peoples. For myself, it's the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Adirondack, and the I'm trying to learn how to pronounce this one, the Lenape. And I live outside of Aylmer, Ontario, down towards St. Thomas. And so for me, I am on the territory that's represented by Treaty 3, the land between the two lakes. And it was from 1792. And that's the area that stretches across from Lake Ontario all the way to Catfish Creek, which actually runs through Aylmer and goes into Lake Erie at Port Bruce, if you're familiar with Port Bruce down this way. Let us also acknowledge the pain and the devastation that contact with Europeans brought to the Indigenous peoples and the suffering that has continued through the centuries to the present day. But let us also remember the ongoing contributions of the Indigenous peoples within Canada and within our own communities. May our reflection today on the territory that we share lead us to renew our commitment to the vital work of reconciliation with the First Peoples of this land. And I'm going to invite you to join me in an opening prayer. Holy One, we have gathered here this evening to talk about our role as representatives of communities of faith within the Regional Council of Horseshoe Falls. We give you thanks for the wonders of the internet that allow us to gather together without having to leave our homes. And more importantly, we give thanks for your Holy Spirit, which unites us in heart and soul and mind as we gather to do the work of your church. May you guide our discussions as we go forward. Amen. For those who've joined in the last couple of minutes or few minutes, if you haven't already put your name and your community of faith in the chat, I invite you to do so. And I am going to begin screen sharing. So can everyone see a screen that says welcome?
No.
No? Okay, let's try this again. Maybe if I push the share button, it'll work better.
There you go.
All right, good. So I am Lynne Allin, and I am the Minister for Congregational Support in Horseshoe Falls and in Antler River Watershed. And I work with the Covenant Commission in both of those regions. And we work to help congregations and support them on all matters of things except the pastoral relations piece. So anything that has to do with M&P committees and working with hiring ministry personnel, that sort of thing. We work in either in conjunction with the Human Resources, or Human Resources is the Human Resources Commission is the body that oversees that. So I want to welcome you all to this evening and invite you to engage in this. It's going to have some not so much training, but information sharing. And it's also an opportunity for us to just connect with one another. I wanted to start by sharing with you, and I have to find my spot, that we have a staff team that serves all three regions, so ARW, Horseshoe Falls, and Western Ontario Waterways. And you may know some or all of the staff from coming to regional gatherings. So I'll just go through this quickly. And you can also find this, all of this information and our contact information on the Horseshoe Falls website. So we have Cheryl Ann Stadelbauer-Sampa, who is our executive minister, and she basically holds everything together, and she works with the executives, and she specifically provides guidance in governance and administration of the regional council. New to our team is McCall Cottrell. He started as our Minister for Pastoral Relations back in August as Diane Blanchard was retiring. Kathy Douglas is our Minister for Faith Formation. So she works with UCWs and camps and has offered a number of wonderful workshops on various topics from Sunday school and youth ministry and other programs. I think there was one recently, very recently, on pastoral care and how to put together a pastoral care team. Sue Doulaban is the executive assistant, and so she also works with the executives and also helps provide administration support for the regional council. Krista Ford is our administrative assistant for finance. And Pratima is our assistant for communication and records. So the beautiful newsletters that you get are put together by Pratima. And then she also helps, you've probably dealt with her if you were registering for an event or you were putting together your expression of interest, that sort of thing. So she's somebody that you may have shared emails with at some point. Ruth Anna Mack is one of our administrative assistants, and she is often the person that is in the office building. People ask us if we use the office building on a regular basis. It is being used, but most of us are working from our home, partly because we are scattered across the three regions. And so some people are a good couple of hours commute to the regional office. So it makes more sense for us to work from home using our laptops. John Neff is my colleague in Western Ontario Waterways. So he is also a Minister for Congregational Support and works with their Covenant Commission. And John and I cover for each other when we're on vacation, that sort of thing. So you may have connected with John if I was away at some point. Michelle Pettick, she is the website guru behind the scenes who takes care of our websites, and she also provides some admin support. She is the admin support for the Covenant Commission in Horseshoe Falls. So she helps us with our meetings. Therese Samuel is the Minister for Right Relations and Social Justice. So she works with the Mission and Discipleship Commission, and she works with our Indigenous communities of faith and with our Affirm network and in several other areas. Kevin Steeper is the Minister for Pastoral Support. So he's what we call the Minister to the Ministers, and he provides pastoral care to all of the ministry personnel in all 3 regions. And then we have Martha Pettiquet. She is the Community Capacity Development Coordinator, which is a position that works with the Indigenous communities of faith, and she works closely with Therese. Tanya Cameron is with the Office of Vocation, and she is deployed to our 3 regions. So she's working with students, candidates, ministry personnel, and the Board of Vocation. Brenna Baker is also new to our staff team. She has taken over from Dave Jagger, who's moved on to a different position within the stewardship office. And so if you have questions about stewardship, Brenna's the person you want to talk to. She can tell you all about the various resources available to congregations and answer questions around mission and service, as well as things like tips on how to help your online community be encouraged to donate to your congregation, for example. And then there's me, back when my hair was a little shorter. We actually just had a time today at Five Oaks as staff. This wasn't from today, this is from some other times over the last few years. But we were able to meet today in person for the first time in quite some time to do some visioning and to gather for a Christmas lunch, which was at Five Oaks, which was lovely. And the staff support team was there to join us and make us feel special, which was much, much appreciated. So that's your staff team. And we all, you know, even though John is primarily Western Ontario Waterways, he's often doing the tech at our regional council meetings, and we all work together to serve all 3 regions. So if you're looking for contact information, again, it is on the website, and I'm going to be showing you the website in a few minutes as well. What I really wanted to say to you tonight is that you are really important people as the lay reps for your congregation. You are an important piece in the life and work of your community of faith, because you represent them when you come to the regional gatherings. You vote on their behalf at the regional gatherings. And then you are also the person who takes back to your community of faith the information and knowledge about resources, and helps them stay connected to the wider church, the wider United Church as well. So you really are a pivotal person as almost like a conduit between the regional council and your community of faith. So it is much appreciated that you are serving in those roles. Many of you also serve as either members of commissions or as part of what we call the resource pool. And the resource pools we're still defining to some degree, but for example, there are people who serve as liaisons with the Human Resources Commission. In the Covenant Commissions, we have many people who serve as pastoral charge supervisors. We have some who we have asked to share their gifts and skills with congregations who might be amalgamating. And we are currently looking for a team of people who will be what we're calling a care team for congregations who are disbanding. So basically, it will be not so much a person who can answer all the questions about the process, but the person who is there on behalf of regional council to let the congregation know that they're not alone and that we care about what is happening, and that we know that disbanding is a challenging time in the life of a congregation. So if you have maybe had personal experience with your own community of faith disbanding in the past, or you just feel called to that, I'd like to put together a team with some people in different parts of the regional council geographically. And I would love to have you send me an email or give me a phone call after you've reflected on that as we start to put this together. And so some of the things we're thinking is it would be nice to have somebody there if we knew they were having their meeting to vote on disbanding, have somebody to be able to attend their final service, maybe have somebody there at some other significant points in their wrapping up. Sometimes congregations have a number of special services, and maybe just somebody to pick up the phone once in a while and say, hey, how are you doing? We're thinking about you and holding you in prayer. So that's one of the new areas the Covenant Commission is looking to create within the resource team. But if you've had experience, say, with archives in your own church, you're the archivist, or if you've had experience dealing with property matters or amalgamations, those sorts of things, let me know, and or let Adrian Robertson know, who is the chair of the Covenant Commission, because we are hoping to start to put together some of those specialty teams to be able to help other communities of faith. And again, because we're a large geographic region, people out west would laugh if I say that, but it's still a fairly large geographic region as I've driven around it. It's nice to have people in the various areas. The other thing that I am really hoping I can enlist your help with as well is providing guidance regarding what types of information and things are required from your community of faith, so that it helps us with that piece of communication to the governing bodies. How many people are on their governing bodies in their churches?
Mm-hmm.
Quite a few of you. And if you're not, because not every community of faith has that position for a lay rep on their governing body, then I would encourage you to at least reach out and ask if you could report a few times a year to update them, or and also perhaps report to the congregation as a whole. Also, if you have friends in other communities of faith at their congregations who have not yet elected a lay representative, encourage them to do so, because otherwise they are missing that opportunity to participate and to vote in regional council matters, and they also may be missing out on important information. We know that all ministry personnel are members of the regional council as well, but I think sometimes the lay voice is extremely important, and you can get the message across to your board, where sometimes with ministry personnel, I think it kind of gets lost in everything else they're doing. So you're kind of the person for your congregation who is dedicated to being that communication link. So these are, again, some of the things that you can do in your role. Educate your governing body about where to find the resources, because people don't tend to ask where is the information until they need it. And then all of a sudden, well, we want to sell a piece of property, or we have to prepare for search, or we want to know about something else and they don't know where to start. So that's why I'm going to give you a tour of the website so you know the resources that are there. Because if they look at those first, then if there's still questions, they've had a chance to perhaps refine their questions before they come to the Covenant Commission or to me for more information. One of the things that, again, I will show you, no, this one I won't show you, Church Hub. So every congregation has an account on Church Hub. That is your way to provide information to the United Church database. And unfortunately, not every community of faith has updated that. So if you have not updated that, we don't have current contact information. And I know that because in late 2020, we sent out mailings to churches and we had several come back in the mail that they couldn't be delivered. So that meant that whatever address we had for the church, it was no longer accurate. And that's sometimes because, especially in smaller congregations, it's an individual who has been named as their home address for the church. And if it doesn't get updated and that person has moved, then we don't have a way to connect with your congregation. There's also places to put the email address and phone numbers. And then there is a section called Community of Faith Roles, ROLE, not dinner rolls. And that is a place for you name your chair of your board or your council secretary and contact information. They can add your name there as the name of the lay rep. And some of your congregations have more than one lay rep based on the size of the congregation. Please encourage them to include that, because then again, it helps us stay current so that we can connect with you as lay representatives. So that's the first task. If you could check with whoever is managing the Church Hub account, it might be the office administrator or somebody else in the congregation. The other thing we're going to talk a little bit more about is the Community of Faith profile. This is a document that is intended for every congregation to do an update annually. We haven't been promoting it too much because congregations have been busy with something called COVID for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But this is a very helpful tool for discernment and for helping communities of faith sort of get a handle on trends and strengths and weaknesses. And so I would like to see communities of faith make it a goal to do their profile in 2023 and get into the habit of sort of updating it every late fall or early winter and approving it at the congregational meeting, the annual meeting. And then it's on your shelf and ready to go, because the Community of Faith profile is required as background for search for any ministry position, for grant applications. You want to apply for a building modernization grant or a technology grant. This is going to be asked as background. If you want to sell or purchase property or do a major renovation, basically any of the work that requires consultation with regional council and regional council approvals, we're going to need this as background. So if you've got it ready to go and updated every year, it just will speed up your process tremendously. And as I said, most importantly, it's a good discernment tool. And as I've already talked about, one of the other things you can do is get involved either as a commission member or as part of our resource pools. So when we get to the website in a minute, I'm going to show you the congregational support toolkits. And this is a collection of handbooks, templates, and resources that we have put together on a variety of topics. As I said, it's the best place to start when you're looking for how do we sell a piece of property. And then there are also other resources that are available on the website for pastoral relations, et cetera, or finding staff. The other piece that I just realized I forgot to mention from the previous slide was, in addition to the community of faith profile, there is something called the self-assessment. And the self-assessment is also something that congregations are encouraged and we expected to do each year. It's a way to know what you don't know. And so we always introduce it by saying, don't panic when you look at the list. It is truly a checklist, but it will tell you things like what policies are required, not by the church, but by the provincial government. So things like a privacy policy or an occupational health and safety policy. If you go through that list and you find that there are several things that you don't have up to date, do not panic, because we suggest that you might name 2 or 3 of them as being a goal for that year and work on those.
May I ask when this self-assessment first appeared?
I believe we had it ready to go by end of 2019, but I know a lot of congregations have not yet used one. I think it went into the manual in about 2019 as something that churches were asked to do, an annual self-assessment, and then it was up to the regions to sort of provide the tool for doing it.
We have just become aware of it, so I'm just a bit concerned about the communication.
Well, and
portion.
part of the problem, as I said, has been COVID, and we prioritized what we felt congregations could work on, because when they were in the midst of adapting to COVID, it didn't seem to be the right time to say, oh, by the way, everybody, you have to do this. I mean, the tool's been there, we have encouraged it, but we haven't spotlighted it. And so now, as congregations are starting to sort of move back into something that seems a little more normal, we're raising it again. Some of the things it includes are making sure you filed your CRA, charitable return each year, because again, we discovered that in the last couple of years, there have been some congregations, I think, because of COVID, that have neglected to do that and are now trying to get their charitable status reinitiated. And the one thing I would love to see is that every congregation checks their property deed and make sure it's in the name of the United Church, because I would say about 80 to 90% of congregations that go to sell property discover it still says the Methodist Church or the Presbyterian Church. So again, it slows down the process if then they have to hire somebody to update the deed. So having it done ahead of time means that when you're ready to do something with property, it's ready to go.
Lynn, is the assessment in the toolkit?
Yes, Yep.
Okay.
And
Thank
that's where we're. Now, last time I tried this, it didn't want to open for me. So let's,
I think you've answered my question, but I was wondering how the self-assessment is different to the profile.
okay, yep, and I can show you that.
Okay. Sounds like the self-assessment is more legalities and
Right, it's more,
policies and
yeah.
whatever.
So I'm gonna, because this doesn't seem to want to follow the link.
Mhm.
So there we have our website.
Uh-huh.
What you might find really helpful is under About, we have this map. Now, I will say that the map is currently a little bit outdated because we've had some communities of faith amalgamate and some disband, and we haven't caught up with it yet. And some congregations have changed their names, or they've changed the names of the pastoral charge. For example, Port Rowan is Long Point Bay, that kind of thing. So forgive us if we've got some things that aren't caught up. But you can see that if I click on one of these dots, it tells me what church it is, the address, and if we have a website, it'll be there. And you can also sort of see who are the neighbors. And the other way you can do it is to look through the list, and okay, you want to see where Appleby is, it will put a white circle around it. And then you know where Appleby is. So I know a lot of people have been talking about missing gatherings with their neighbors, but they don't know how to contact or who are the closest churches to them. That's one of the tools that might be helpful. Our minutes are there from our regional council meetings, the executive minutes, the commission minutes. Keep in mind that they don't get up sort of the day after our meetings. Sometimes there is a bit of a delay. And then the staff directory is there as well. This is what I really wanted to show you is under communities of faith, there are pastoral relations toolkits. And then there are the congregational support toolkits. And if you click here, you get the list. So for example, the community of faith profile, we have a handbook, and then we have the worksheets. Because the community of faith profile is tied quite tightly to searching for new ministry personnel as well, we've also included this new document that outlines all the steps that you need to follow when you start the search process. And the first step is, involving updating your community of faith profile. There are a number of worksheets, as I mentioned, and people often think, okay, this is just busy work. It's really an opportunity. Everybody can see the financial viability worksheet. To gather information in one place so that you can look for trends and look for your strengths, your challenges, and help set your ministry priorities. So I'm not going to go through this in a lot of detail because I am watching the time. But for example, this would show your revenue and expenses over a 6-year period and whether or not you've been running a deficit. And so that's important information for your planning. Your investments would be here, and whether they're restricted investments. Sometimes investments are restricted because of they came as an inheritance with some restrictions. Sometimes they're restricted because they were collected for a specific purpose, like a new roof. And sometimes they're restricted because it was the sale of the manse or other property. So all of that information's there. Collect some payroll information. looking at your building costs, because if your building is costing you more than 25% of your total revenue, maybe it's time to do some maintenance or consider whether your building is an asset or a liability to your ministry. And then we get into some questions like how many contributors and what's the trend there? This question always seems to throw people because we're asking about the ages of your contributors. Again, this is general. Don't ask for people's birth certificates or something. But I think most of us realize that if the majority of your givers are in these last two boxes, then you might need to do some 2 to 5 year planning, right? But those aren't questions that people want to stand up at your annual meeting and ask. But this is the information that will help your congregation do some discerning. And then again, we ask this question about giver, not because we're just being nosy, but because some congregations have been reliant on 1 or 2 households to carry the majority of the budget. And they didn't know until that person moved away or passed away and then suddenly they're in a crisis. So we're not asking for who is in these categories, but just so that you have a sense of are you vulnerable financially? And then there's a question about stewardship resources. And this is if you're going into search, and we've put as much highlighting and boxes around it because we have to know how many hours the position is a week and what category, whether you're searching. So that's this one. And you can see once you've done it once, then each year you're just updating one or two columns with the most current information. Then we
Lynn, how does this apply to congregations who have very recently amalgamated and don't necessarily have that history?
Excellent question, Margaret. Basically, you start with what you've got. So you would have maybe, 1 year, 2 years, but it would build over time. The demographic form also has some of the basic information that you would have on your statistics report. But this is the piece that I find the most exciting, is it's asking not just the numbers of people in your congregation, but what are their gifts, their skills, and their passions. And I always say, like, if I in a congregation, if somebody was looking to put together a sewing group, that's not something that I'd be passionate about, because it is something I am not good at. But if somebody was putting together a kayaking group, I'd be right there, right? So if you know the gifts, skills, and passions of your congregation, you're more likely to develop programs that they are excited about and want to get involved in. And it could be that you didn't know that, Mrs. Jones plays an incredible violin and could maybe offer some music during worship. So again, this is not about 1 or 2 people sitting down and filling it out. It's an opportunity for conversation with your membership and find out what makes them excited. If they're really excited about environmental stuff, then maybe there's something in the community you could do or whatever. There's also questions about your community of faith, about your neighborhood, and then looking at where your gifts, skills, and passions might fit and be welcome in the neighborhood, or some partnerships. So that's the purpose of the demographic form. The real property form, I'm not even going to open. You just put down the addresses of any property you own. Do you own a cemetery? Do you own a manse? Do you own a spare lot somewhere across the road for extra parking? That kind of thing. And then the living faith story document is, once you've kind of looked at all that other information, it's who are you? What makes you unique as a community of faith? So do you have a purpose statement? Do you have, some churches have identified certain values like hospitality or willingness to take risk or inclusiveness, those sorts of things. And who are you as a community of faith? Do you have some goals? And I would like to encourage governing bodies to think about how your living faith story, how your purpose and goals guide the decision making. So again, if you've decided that you are very keen about the environment, then maybe if you're making a decision about property maintenance, you're going to talk about getting LED lighting and that sort of thing. So you would tie it back to what you've said are your ministry priorities. And then this is a set of headings for you to describe who you are. So under worship, you might say, we are a congregation who follows a regular order of worship, and we want to hear new music every week. Does somebody have a question?
No, I just need, sorry.
That's okay. So, and there's a place for priorities. So again, you could send this list out to your whole membership and say, you know, which of these are most important to you? And you might find when you get the responses back that you thought everybody thought worship was the first priority, but it turns out they think you know, social community outreach is the first priority. So again, it's about helping you articulate who you are as a community of faith. And even though we have many of congregations with the same name, Trinities or Saint this, Saint that, we know that each congregation is unique. So that's the community of faith profile. I know I'm going through some of this quickly. Property information, there's a toolkit on that. There's a toolkit on amalgamating and disbanding with handbooks and some templates. If you have a pastoral charge supervisor, there's a handbook there. I have to update it because as of this summer, General Council has said that pastoral charge supervisors now have to be at congregational meetings as well as your council or board meetings. So that is a change, but the basics, all the rest of the information there is current. This is the one on the self-assessment. So there is some background information and instructions, and then there is the checklist. And as I said, it is a checklist with things like your profile. Have you updated your Church Hub profile, just as I was talking about?
Excuse me, Lynn.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out, are you going to be sending us all this? Because I can't, I try to take a picture and you've already moved it. Like, you're
Sorry,
going quite
no.
fast.
I'm going to recommend you go to the website and you can download everything from the website. Or you can talk to, so for this, you could talk to the chair of your board and say, this is something we really should do before, you know, maybe before the annual meeting, and show them where to find it. If you really can't find something, send me an email and I'll send you the link. Okay, but these are all there on the website to be downloaded. And often then you can download them to your computer and you can fill them out on a computer, which is helpful because we like this one to be sent back to us digitally, and the community of faith profile has to be sent back digital. So one of the other things is that your annual report is a copy of your annual report. Remember when you used to take a copy to presbytery, if you were presbytery reps?
Yeah.
Now please send me a digital copy of your annual report each year.
Lynn, I have a question about the faith, the profile.
Yes.
So once the profile has been put together,
Mhm.
and the congregation has approved it.
Yeah.
Do we put it on the church hub?
So you can put your living faith story there.
Yeah.
Your church hub also has a spot called a published folder, and you can upload any documents you like there. So it's a good place to store things like the worksheets so they don't get lost, and a copy of your annual report. Keep in mind that no one really sees what's there unless you're in search.
Okay.
And so if you're in search, again, you need to have the living faith story filled out, and you can include some of these other worksheets by putting them in the publish folder and having a link to that file in your living faith story. So that's probably more technical than some people need at this point. If you are going into search, the Covenant Commission has to approve your profile.
Okay.
Because we're looking at your financial ability to pay that minister for hopefully 3 years. So if we see that you've been running significant deficits and you want to hire somebody full-time, the highest category, the Covenant Commission will probably invite you to have a conversation to explain how you are going to cover the salary costs, right?
So then we don't have to have it up on the church hub if we're not in search, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
But we like to receive copies for information. We meet the Covenant Commission, but we only have to approve them if you are going into search.
Okay.
It's good to have your congregation review it and approve it, because especially the living faith story. So this,
And if I could just jump in as a member of the Covenant Commission, it is important to remember that the profile is not just the old JNAC. It is something that is to be done and to be updated probably every 3 years or so, whether you're in the middle of a 15-year relationship with your minister or whatever the case may be. It's a change in thinking, and it should have been done by now, and should be at least reviewed and refreshed every 3 years or so.
I'd say every year, actually, Steve, because then you don't have to play catch up, right?
Yeah.
If you just do it every year and renew it at your annual meeting, it's always ready to go.
I was just being easy on them.
I know, but then they have to go find 3 years worth of annual reports to fill in all the financial information. So that's why I think it's actually simpler to do it as you go. But and then, as I said, this, like, a lot of congregations are not aware of all the government required policy, right? Again, but you don't panic. You start to look at them, and I'll show you when we go back to the website. We are working on trying to get templates where we can, to help make it easier for you to have some of these policies. Things like, making sure, as I said, your charitable status returns are filed annually. You have a rental policy, perhaps, is a good idea. Your community of faith governing body meets at least quarterly. That's a requirement in the manual. That you have trustees, you have insurance. So, as I said, this is a checklist, and it's meant to help you know what you maybe don't know, and to make sure that everything's covered, because we live in a much different world than we did 20, 30, 50 years ago. There are more requirements of the church as an employer and as a charity and as a public building. And so that is what we want this to help you know, is what is a requirement of a congregation. So there's also some information there on the historic role, because we get questions about the historic role. Collaborative agreements or shared ministry agreements, that's when 2 or more congregations work together on something. Often it is sharing a ministry position, but it also could be that you've decided to work together on a specific project or initiative. These are some of the templates that I was talking about under compliance. And this is some of the information we put together a couple of years ago for annual meetings. If people just wanted some guidance on best practices, on annual reports, and this piece we can hopefully take off. It was some of the things that were in place just during COVID, where some of the rules were suspended for a while. Was there another piece I was supposed to go back to that I've forgotten? There's also information here about like affirming the right relations, social justice, and some other general resources here as well. Okay. So that is the website, and my last slide, so I'm going to stop sharing, just said questions. Bob.
I think I'm muted.
No, I can hear you.
Oh, good. My special interest has always been in archives.
Yes, I remember.
Where is that? Where does that fit into what toolkit?
Right.
What?
So I don't have a specific toolkit up here because the archives has a really good web page themselves.
Yes.
The United Church Archives, and they have a list of what they require. We do have some information in the handbooks for amalgamating and disbanding churches, so that they have the links included for the archives. But people like yourself are also a great resource if we can refer people to you for information about what the archives want.
Certainly. Further question: who in this framework, where does reviewing the records, checking to be sure they're in good shape, this sort of thing that used to be done by the presbytery?
Right, that piece still hasn't really been worked out because of the fact that with COVID, we couldn't be meeting in person. And also we couldn't figure out how the capacity would work. We can't have everybody bring their records to a spring gathering, for example.
Right.
It wouldn't be time. So that's a piece that I think is still to be sorted out as a regional council. And sorting out what is the requirement in terms of that. The reality is that the shift in structure means that communities of faith are in some ways have more autonomy, but also carry more responsibility for making sure these things are done, because you're not going to have necessarily, like, for example, we used to have the presbytery oversight visits. Right. And we don't do that now. So that's why the self-assessment checklist is in some ways so that a congregation can check that it's got everything done, rather than having somebody come in and say, have you got this, let's see your deed. I remember presbytery coming into my churches saying, okay, where's your deed? Where's your insurance? Where's all of this? Now we're saying, okay, we're trusting that the congregations are going to go through the list and make sure they've got everything in place.
Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah. Any other questions? One of the things is this something that you would like to have, say a couple regional gatherings a year for lay reps? You'd like to do this again? Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with most of what you're saying. I think the self-assessment piece is a surprise for me, but I think this is very helpful that we, because of the structure.
Yes.
I think it's a good way in which we can connect and check ourselves to make sure that we're passing on the information, and maybe what even responses we're getting from the congregations.
Yes.
When we go back with that, yeah.
Right, and sometimes congregations don't even know where to start. So I can tell you that you can reach out to any staff, and if it's not the right person, we will direct you to who you should talk to. So, you know, and I will also say that sometimes it takes us a few days to get to the emails, because you know, we get a lot of them, but we will get back to you. So I always say, go first to the website. If you can't find your answer there, or you need more detail, then reach out to staff or to somebody on the commissions, and we're all happy to help. That's what we're here for. The way I describe it is, I think of congregational support as a way of saying we're in this together. As regional council and as congregations, we're dealing with all these changes in our society and how they're affecting church life. And then we've all been, you know, dealing with the pandemic, but we're in it together. And we share this ministry called the United Church as something that we are called to do together. And we need you. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions this evening? And I see Judy's here as well. Judy's also on the Covenant Commission, and so is Mary Anderson. And we have Steve. I can't see everybody real quick, so I don't know if there's other commission members there. I see Pat Tooley is on the Human Resources Commission.
Yeah, Ross Gowan is here, or was here.
Okay. Ross is also on the Covenant Commission. And they're all friendly people. I'll vouch for them. They'd all be happy to help with their questions too.
I do have a general information question, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned earlier in passing that the pastoral charge supervisors are going to be necessary to attend the congregational meeting, the annual meeting. Do you know the reason, particularly A, why that is happening, and B, do they have to be at the meeting in order to make it a proper meeting?
Yes, so that's what the general council motion proposal was, that they are required for quorum, but they don't have to be physically present. So they can be present by Zoom or by cell phone, because we know that a lot of them are in ministry themselves, and you're going to want to have your annual meeting right after church on a Sunday. And so they may not be able to travel, but if they're there available. And I think it's because often questions around polity and practice come up at those congregational meetings. And if you don't have ministry personnel at that time, or you have a student who maybe hasn't had the polity courses, you need sort of a resource close at hand to say, no, we can't do, it's one of the questions I get quite often is, can we do proxy ballots? Not at congregational or governance meetings in the church. And that's because we believe the Holy Spirit is present as we discuss these matters, and might change the way people vote on a motion. And so we don't do proxy. But some of that is the reason, I think, is to have a person available to the congregation to answer questions as they come up.
And the follow-up then, that would only be if it's a pastoral charge supervisor, it would not necessarily be the minister of the church. The minister of the church is not a member of the congregation.
Right. So, but they would be there. So you have a pastoral charge supervisor if you don't have ministry personnel, or if you have a student, or if you have a minister who is in the admissions process. So
Right.
Those are the 3 times you have a pastoral charge supervisor, and they would have to be present. Otherwise, your minister should be present at your congregational meeting, the same as they're required for quorum at your board meetings or council meetings.
But there's the issue I guess it's going to have to go to general council then, is that the minister is not a member of the congregation.
True.
So yes,
but-
he could be there to answer a polity question, but there's the question of him having to be there in order to make the meeting legal.
Yes, it's the same as they are required to make your governing body meetings quorum.
Okay,
They
we'll
need to be there. Yeah.
we'll have to ask general counsel about that. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, any other questions?
Lynn,
Yes.
Lynn, talking about this pastoral charge supervisor, we have interim minister, as you know, Sue Cowan.
Mhm.
Now, do we need a pastoral charge supervisor for the annual meeting in February?
No, you have a minister who would be there. So Sue will be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, no.
Yeah. Right. It's
Nope.
only congregations, as I said, with a student or with an admissions or
Yeah, okay.
or no
No.
minister. Yeah.
She's regarded as a pastor, so,
Right, but she's I don't know, she's a designated lay minister, so she's considered ministry
yeah,
personnel.
okay, no problem. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, I'm aware we've gone past 8 o'clock. Again, if people think of questions later, send me an email. Last call for a question tonight. I don't see any. So again, I just want to thank you all for what you do. Offer you a blessing that you go back and enjoy the rest of your evening and be refreshed and renewed, and know that your gifts and skills and time matter in the life and work of the church that we share.
Thank you, Lynn.
You're
Thanks, Lynn.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for being here.
Take care.
everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for organizing this.
You're most welcome.
Helpful.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thanks,
You're
Lynn.
welcome. Have a good evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.